Hey everybody, and welcome to Meditation 101. This course is designed for anybody who wants to get in touch with their own ability to meditate. I'm going to go over a few different options for how you can meditate, but more importantly, I want to discuss why we meditate and some of the things that get in the way, what to expect, what's normal. Because I feel like a lot of people, when they come to meditation, they have these really high expectations of what the experience is supposed to be, and then they end up letting themselves down as a result of that. The other thing that seems to happen is that people, they just feel like they don't know what to expect, therefore they feel like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. So that's what this course is basically going to cover, is just all of the basic components. Where you take this is totally up to you. There are some seriously advanced forms of meditation out there, and if you graduate to that point, fabulous. But I'm going to try my best in this course to make it really tangible for you, really basic for you, and give you something to hold on to so that way when you decide to sit and meditate, you kind of have an idea of what to expect, you can grow from there. This is not something that overnight we learn to meditate for an hour at a time. It's a process and it's a practice like anything else. So we're going to go over a whole bunch of little nuggets here, and hopefully you put it together and you find a way to create your own little daily meditation as well, all right? So the first thing that I want to address is, why do we meditate? Now, obviously, this could be a really heated, deep topic where we could get into a lot of reasons. But to put it in layman's terms, really the most simple reason that we meditate is we want to create an inner space inside that is free from the identities and the distractions that come up, right? Whether they're on the external or the internal. An external distraction, the car driving by, the dog barking, your baby crying, okay? Those are all external distractions. An example of an internal distraction would be, my hip hurts, or my mind can't settle, right? Or, I'm just uncomfortable, I'm feeling something I don't want to deal with, okay? So when we get into this meditative space, the goal isn't to omit distractions, because we can't omit them. Life's going to happen. Our body's going to feel things. Our mind is going to ramble, right? The dog is going to bark. Okay, so to try and micromanage reality so we can find peace is not the goal of meditation, okay? The goal is to find that peace in spite of all of the distractions that want to come in, okay? And what we do is we practice not identifying with them, okay? So over time, right, we observe what's happening internally and externally without allowing this chatter or this noise to derail us from that inner peace that we're cultivating, okay? So this is basically why we meditate. Now, you might have other reasons, and if you get into other schools of thoughts, they mean the transcendental or whatnot, but for the most part, meditation is something that you can do on your mat, on your meditation pillow. But I encourage you to practice meditation so you can incorporate it into every moment of your life, right? So piggybacking on that, I want to actually explain what that really means, okay? Now, most of you may or may not be familiar with this idea of observation. So if I were to say to you, you are not your thoughts, you are not your feelings, most of you are like, well, wait a moment, but that's me, that's my identity, that's who I am. But actually not really, right? We kind of respond to our thoughts and we respond to our feelings, right? And we take on a contract or an agreement with them when we interact with such things. When the dog barks and we get angry, we've now formed an agreement, right? An unconscious agreement to now respond to this energy. But we don't have to do that, right? So it's really important to understand how to be the observer, okay? So that way, when we move into creating that peaceful inner space, right, it's ours. And now we govern it, it doesn't govern us, okay? So being the observer of your inner space. And we'll practice that in this course, watching versus, reacting and being in it, okay? The way that I describe it to students is, you kind of want to go from being the actor on the stage to being the audience, watching, okay? So you're just taking it in, but you're not responding, okay? Because a lot of times students go, oh, well, my mind doesn't stop, therefore I'm not meditating, I'm failing. No, it's really quite the opposite. All you're doing is stepping back and watching the thoughts and watching your body respond to it, okay? So this is basically why we meditate. We want to create and cultivate a peaceful inner space that belongs to us and isn't governed by any other external or internal distractions, okay? So that's what we're going to focus on, is how to get there. Okay, so I want to kind of cover a little bit more on the expectation part of this. There's no one way to do this, okay? We're in our body, we can't really escape the body, okay? So when you start meditating, you might not want to sit up. I'm just going to be very honest with you. You might not want to be in full lotus or even like a comfortable seated position. Maybe you want to sit on a pillow and lean your back against the wall. Maybe you want to lay on the ground, right? Or lay on your bed, okay? You need to, first and foremost, put yourself physically in a position to omit as much distraction as you can. And in the beginning, especially if we're older, if we're tighter, those body pains are going to work against us. So we want to be conscious of those, right? And maybe just say, hey, you know what, to get comfortable so I'm not distracted by my right hip or my left shoulder, I'm going to lay down. I'm going to just put some pillows on the floor and I'm going to lay down, okay? Or I'm going to sit against the wall and I'm going to relax, okay? So omitting as much distraction certainly helps in the beginning, especially if it's physical body pain. Because once the body starts talking to us, the process of meditation does become more challenging. And again, I'm not trying to micromanage this or omit these things, but we want to make the beginning aspects of this process as easy and as seamless as possible. So get comfortable physically. So lay down, get against the wall, prop your legs up, whatever you want to do to make yourself comfortable physically, okay? And then the next thing I want to point out is time, right? People are like, I'm going to meditate an hour a day, and they can barely get past 30 seconds, okay? Don't set yourself up for failure. Know that, just like any other practice, if you were to take on running, right, and you were like, I'm going to run for an hour a day when you've never run in your life, that's going to be really hard. So don't set the bar so high. Give yourself a minute. I'm going to do a minute a day. Okay? And you'll be surprised how challenging just a minute can be, okay? And then if that gets easy, then you add 2, 3, 4, 5. But start with something that's really easy, start with something that's really practical, and start with something that's really tangible. Because the last thing we want to do is set ourselves up for failure. And now we're dealing with, I can't do it and I'm ashamed I can't do it, right? We want to try and omit the physical bodily distractions, and we want to omit feelings of incompetency, failure, shame, anything that might come up as a result of not being able to meet your own standards, all right? So make sure that you work at a level that is easy and accessible to you. If you only do it 3 times a week, that's fine, all right? The other thing is time of day. Pick your time of day. Some people prefer the mornings because their mind isn't racing as much, right? They're not quite awake. And that can be a really good thing to work with, right? You haven't had your coffee yet, so your mind isn't active. You're still kind of in a theta state or an alpha state, and that's a really nice place for the brain to be, to focus on this energy practice. Or you might want to do it before bed. Sometimes it's really nice to do it before bed because you want to still your nervous system. You want to still the mind. So you want to integrate the practice at a time of day when you're trying to calm down, all right? There's no right or wrong. It's just what works for you, okay? These practices are designed to make your life easier, more efficient, more fluid, and to give you what you need internally. There's no standard that you have to hit here. This is all about you, what works for you, what you need, and how you want to integrate it into your life. So pick a place, a time of day, a physical setup, and whatever else that you might think that you need, timing it properly so that way you can get started in a way that feels supportive to your own process. So I'm going to start with a form of meditation that I find to be very pointed. It's very channeled. It's a good way to get, focused, right? And it's called Tradaka. Tradaka is actually one of the kriyas, meaning that it purifies and promotes cleansing of the body. In this case, it would be the eyes. So it's candle gazing, and it helps to promote concentration, stimulate memory, and make your eyes really strong. But the reason that I like it is because it's like, okay, here's the flame, let's stare at it, okay? And obviously you want to try and keep our eyes open. As we purify in this process, you might have some emotional releases. You might cry a little bit, but the whole point really is to say, okay, I have something I'm going to stare at, and I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to focus on the candle or the flame, and I'm going to see how long I can concentrate. And again, we don't want to necessarily resist the thoughts in our mind or resist the feelings in our body, because resistance just creates more resistance, okay? We want to observe. Observation is like shedding a light on something and diffusing it, okay? Whereas resistance just creates more, okay? That which we resist will persist. So as feelings come up, as thoughts come in, don't try to push them away, right? Just observe them walking through and see if you can't maintain your connection to the flame here, right? And in the process, you'll find that actually it's a very, very good way to, again, heal your eyes and to create that concentration. Because here it's going to be a little bit more difficult for thoughts to come through and to focus on the flame, right? Our eyes and our mind are already fixated on something. But we're going to observe this, because observation of the mind can be kind of tricky in the beginning. So we're going to focus on the flame, observe the flame. It's outside of us, right? We're looking at it, we're watching it, we're taking it in, and we're allowing this connection to then build, so that way over time we can observe better what's happening internally and not responding to it, okay? So it's a really great practice to, say, here it is, I can see it physically, I can watch it, I can make my observations, okay? And I can do this for a minute a day, and I can build on it, so that way over time, you do 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. It's a hard practice. Candle gazing is very intense. It's a kriya for a reason. It's going to promote purification and cleansing and high forms of concentration for the mind. So, but it's tangible, right? I'm not asking you to move out of your body, right? We're looking at a candle. It's really easy, it's really accessible, and it's a great way to get started if you want something to put your attention on, right? Sometimes it's easier to focus in on something than it is to remove the focus and move into the nothingness space, right? Which I think is why meditation is so difficult, because we're trying to move into this empty space, but there's so much going on. So this gives us something to actually put our attention on, put our concentration on, so that way we can at least focus on the one point, right? So it's one form of meditation. It's not the only form of meditation, but if you find you need something tangible to put your attention on, because observing your thoughts in your body is just too much in the beginning, then I highly recommend Tradaka to try to really focus in your energy. So the next activity that I want to talk about is my personal favorite, actually, and it's really just about breathing, okay? The breath teaches us to be present. When we're focused on our breath, then we're present. And a big part of being able to manage our own inner space has to do with being present. If you're not in your body, right, you can't really govern what's happening. And that happens a lot in our Western world, right? Like our thoughts are like, they've got us carried so far into the future or so far into the past that we're completely negating the present moment. So the breath is a fabulous way to bring you back to now, because now you're in your body, you're in the experience, and you're watching it. So one thing that I actually learned to do years ago when I was kind of struggling with some of my own personal demons was I would just breathe. Okay, again, it's a very tangible practice. It's something that like we all do naturally. And so what would happen basically that I started doing was anytime thoughts would come up that were really challenging for me, especially on my mat, like as a yoga practitioner, I would just move back to the breath. I would literally just take an inhale and allow my focus on the inhale to interrupt that thought process. So if the mind is rambling, right, and you find yourself kind of going there, inhale. Inhale requires no thought. It's a physical action. Now we're observing it, and then you just exhale. And you move into the next inhale and exhale. And again, right? And you can focus on steadying your mind as well as your body by focusing just purely on your inhales and exhales. And anytime the mind wanders, right, we just interrupt that thought process with the breath. Moving into the inhale and exhale. And again, I love this practice because I don't have to just be sitting to do it. This is something that I do as a yoga practitioner when I'm moving through my physical asana practice to remind myself to stay in the moment, in my body, to not get, distracted by my thoughts. Because that's actually how injury happens too, is we're not in our body, right? We're thinking about next Thursday, and then the next thing we know, we hurt our knee. So it's really important to stay integrated into your own inner space. And one of my favorite ways to do that is just through the breath, focusing on your inhales and your exhales, and back to inhale and back to exhale. Now, the other thing that tends to come up for people, because wiring can be, different for everyone. So some of us, right, we get a thought, and it's really negative or whatever, and it causes us anxiety. So the thought becomes a stimulus for the feeling, okay? For others, it's a little different. For others, the more we get still, the more uncomfortable feelings arise, and then the thoughts attach to them. Neither one are really comfortable, neither one are right or wrong. It's just the physiology of the body and our wiring. But when we're trying to break old habits and trying to break patterns, focusing on the breath is a really good way to interrupt that. So if you're one of those people that you're like, oh God, the mortgage is due next week, and the next thing you know, you have anxiety and you're meditating, right? Inhale, exhale. It's not next Thursday, the mortgage isn't due right now, you're right here, right now. So get back in your body, focus on your breath. Now the flip form of that, like I said, is sometimes it starts with a feeling, right? And this is where the process gets really fun, when you start to really get into the observation patterns, which we'll talk about later. But maybe you're sitting and you didn't have the best morning, right? And you're just kind of feeling melancholy, right? But because you're in meditation mode now, you don't have the doing to distract with. So the feeling tends to get stronger. And now the mind is racing. It's basically providing evidence and validation as to why you feel melancholy, okay? You can't distract the feeling and shove it aside by taking care of somebody else because you're sitting and you're trying to focus. And now the body's like, oh, well, now we have, this person's attention, so let's get stronger and really try to take her down, right? The body's very clever like that. If a feeling comes up in your chemistry, the mind finds a way typically to validate it through old stuff or through future fears. And the next thing you know, you've now reintegrated that identity, and we feel defeated, right? We went to meditate and now we feel crappy because, you know, we are stuck in this emotional state. And, you know, a lot of times people at this point will actually quit the meditation process because they're feeling uncomfortable. I encourage you to breathe through it in the beginning, okay? At a more advanced level, you're just going to observe it. You're going to breathe and observe simultaneously. But in the beginning, sometimes it's easier to just interrupt the process with the breath. So we don't want to reintegrate old patterns, right? We want to actually create space to integrate new ones. And that's part of the meditation process, is being able to now, you know, make that gap in between thoughts, make that gap in between reactions bigger, right? So that way we have more space. We're now in control, right? We're breathing through the old, and we are making room for new. Okay? So really, 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 really simple. A minute a day, you know? Close your eyes, get comfortable, and then just breathe and focus. Feel the body filling up with oxygen and release it, right? Just take it in, let it out. Big inhale, big exhale. And take your focus there. That's all you have to do for a minute a day. And you can expand from there so that you don't have to start out really hardcore. You just do something that's really easy, really tangible. Again, the point of meditation is to kind of learn how to be the observer of our own inner space and to not be managed by it anymore, right? So we're no longer responding, we are observing, okay? So be patient with yourself. This is something that takes time for a lot of people. And, you know, could take years to really get good at. And when you get good at it, you know, in your own meditation space, then little by little you make it into a habitual practice in your life, right? You're sitting in traffic and someone cuts you off and you just inhale and you exhale, right? We're not responding anymore to situations. We're observing it, right? And then we're just allowing it to move without being part of it. We're not the actor, we are now the audience, okay? And then it becomes more of who you are in your daily life. So I think breathing is a fabulous way to get started, and it's always a beautiful place to come back to. In your body, in your space, feeling your breath. And the other thing I want to point out about just being in the breath and the body, when we get anxiety especially, right, when emotions run high, we tend to feel disconnected. The ego is always going to want to like run that old tape in the back of our mind. And so if you can come back to the breath, then basically what you're saying is I am connected to myself, and therefore I'm connected to everything I need. And it pulls you out of the fear. Okay, so breathing is a really good way to come back to camp one and just find yourself, okay? The mind loves to trip us up, but the breath is a fabulous way to remind yourself that you are safe, you are okay. So even if you're not in a meditative space, even if you're not like going about your daily practice, if you find yourself tripped up in general, come back to the breath. That's where you're safe, okay? That's where that fight or flight mode can be managed and you're not responding. Okay, so for this last example of a really tangible way to start practicing meditation, I would encourage you to get comfortable on your bed or on the floor so that your body can completely surrender into the earth, okay? You want to get really, really, really relaxed. Again, we don't want to micromanage internal or external distractions, but if we can kind of help ourselves to remove as much discomfort going in, the easier the process will inevitably be. So I got myself comfortable here. I have, you know, kind of a bolster under my my legs to prop them up, and then I've got, blankets under my head to prop my head up. And from here, I'm just going to lay myself into the earth and relax a little bit, close my eyes. The first thing I'm going to focus on actually is just my breathing pattern. And I'm going to find my inhales and then release on the exhale. Whether you choose to breathe through the mouth or through the nose is a personal choice, as long as you're focusing on the breath itself, okay? Many people have integrated this form of meditation into some basic 101 stuff, so I'm going to offer that here. But basically what you would do, right, is to get in touch with your body and become familiar with your body and being in your own skin, as you're going to do a body scan from here. So you feel the inhales rise your chest, the exhales lower you down. And then we're going to draw our attention to our feet, right? So we're going to find the part of our foot or our feet that are actually connected to the earth, and we're going to just feel them kind of weighted into the earth. And we're going to start with moving our focus into the rest of the foot by looking at the toes, you know what I mean? But from the inside, right? Our eyes are closed, we're relaxed. So we're going to move into our sensation of feeling, and we're going to feel the toes, wiggle them around and relax them. Drawing attention into the sole of the foot and the top of the foot. And we're going to move our focus then to the ankle. Breathing comfortably. Drawing it up the shin and the calf muscle. Pulling our awareness into the lower body as we move it up towards the front of the knee, the back of the knee. All the while continuing to breathe. And then we're going to pull our attention up into the thighs, quadricep and hamstring. Inhaling and exhaling as you go. Being mindful of any tension. Being mindful of any parts of the body that really need your attention, and not being derailed by it, but just observing it. And then you're going to pull your focus up towards your hip bones, your sit bones, the pelvic cavity, into your entire hip area. Feel the gravity of it all going into the earth as you breathe again, relaxing. Then pulling that focus into the lower belly, lower back. You can then draw your attention up into the rib cage. And now we are at the level of the diaphragm. So you can really give a nice exhale. Pulling it into the heart area, chest cavity, upper back. Again, just feeling gravity on the floor, like your body weighted and rooted deep into the floor. Pulling the focus into the shoulders, the neck, and then outwards towards the arms. Moving it from the upper arm to the elbow. And then moving it from the lower arm into the hands. Palm of the hand, back of the hand, fingers. And then scanning your way back up to the shoulders, to the neck, and then into your head. Feel the back of your head heavy on the ground or on the pillow. Moving into the forehead, top of the head, chin and face. Feeling your face become relaxed, being mindful of any tension that might be in the face or the forehead. Breathing in the awareness and exhaling that tension out. All the while, we're just trying to draw our focus to a point. Trying to take our awareness into focused concentration. So that eventually, after we've learned to fine-tune our concentration, we can step away and observe everything. So I really like this meditation process because it really allows the body to relax, removing some of the physical part of the pains that might come up. You know, one point at a time, focusing on different body parts, continuing the breath pattern, and then just allowing the mind to stay at one point all throughout. As a beginner, one of the first benefits you'll notice of meditation is that it teaches you calmness and relaxation. And I really find that this particular exercise very much helps you to move into that space. So those first three exercises, or the three exercises that I just showed you, are just really tangible. Most people, when they think of meditation, they think of it as this nebulous process, right? And the whole goal of this course is to give you something that you can focus on and really utilize in a hands-on kind of way, right? So we have the Tradaka, which is the candle gazing, and I totally encourage you to study that more if that resonates with you. Focusing on the breath, right? Because that puts us back into our body and back into the present moment. And then the third one, the lying down meditation, and just focusing on your body. Again, that teaches you how to be present in your skin, but it also teaches you now how to kind of observe as well. So with my background in meditation, you know, like I've said before, we want to get to a point where we can take these practices and apply them when the kid's crying, when, you know, we're in traffic, when we're in a negotiation. You know, meditation isn't just something that we can do all on its own or by itself. It's something that we can practice and then integrate into every aspect of our life. And for me, that was definitely the goal, was to be able to take this and allow it to be kind of what governed the way I operated throughout my entire day. So I want to touch on something, you know, that may or may not be applicable to your own meditation process. Maybe you just want to learn how to concentrate, in which case Tradaka is perfect, right? You just want to focus your mind in on that one place and not be derailed. But if you want to graduate to a higher level of meditation, then you might want to come to an understanding about the ego, okay? So the ego, or the monkey mind, or whatever you want to call it, is that voice that never shuts up, okay? And I know I touched on it before with like it identifying with the emotional state, but the ego is really powerful at keeping us locked, right, in identity. And this may or may not be above your head, but if you're following me, great. When we are in our thoughts, we are now in the mind and we are identified, okay? Therefore, again, we are responding to and we are not watching. But if you want to get to a higher level of integrating this into your daily life and really move into higher levels of consciousness, then you want to learn how to observe the mind, observe the thoughts, observe the feelings, okay? It's a little easier to observe feelings than it is to observe the mind, okay? But anytime you're identified with thought form, you're coming from ego. Anytime. So anytime you're like, you know, that is blue and I am a woman, that's all ego, okay? Now these aren't good or bad labels, it's just ego. We're now in identity form. But if we want to transcend our own consciousness and move out of that space and be free of identity form, then we have to learn to observe these things instead, right? So that means that we watch them, but we don't attach to them. The example that I give my students often when they get to this point in the meditation process is to watch their mind or to watch their emotional state like they're watching a child throw a tantrum, right? It's an energy force. It's a frequency that's trying to bring you down, that's trying to get a reaction out of you, whether it's your own thoughts or your own emotion. But your job is to just watch objectively and know that, like, this too shall pass. My mind just needs to stop rambling, right? The feelings just need to move through me. I don't have to identify or agree with these things, okay? And then you're like, oh wait, there's a certain degree of freedom there. Like, I'm not the sadness that I woke up to. I don't have to react to my loud neighbor down the street, right? Now we've moved into this freedom space where we have a choice, okay? So while meditation is a fabulous way to establish concentration, it's also a really wonderful way to move out of form and then create space for new systems, new thoughts, new feelings, new experiences to come in. I'm not going to go fully into that process in this course, but I wanted to leave you with that thought, because if you really want to take your yoga off the mat and into your everyday life, that's essentially what you're headed for. You're headed for that inner space of freedom where you now have a choice, right? You're not responding to life anymore. You're not just your personality anymore. You have the option to move out of it and create space for something entirely new. Whether you choose to leave that space empty or bring in something different is now on you, but you've created the opportunity to do that, okay? Meditation is a fabulous way to graduate to that process. And so if you were to start practicing just at the basic level, right, then you're just going to watch your thoughts and notice, wait, I didn't have to agree with that thought. I don't have to respond to that thought, okay? And all it takes is, you know, 1 or 2 baby steps to realize that, you know, I am not these thought forms. I am not the feelings that come up. I don't have to respond anymore. And it's a split second in time where now we've created a space, right? We've now questioned what we saw. We're not responding to it. We're observing it instead. Okay, so this is where my meditation is at. I integrated into every aspect of my life. I have chosen to live a life of hyper-awareness where I am not only just the actor on stage, but I'm also observing myself at all times, because I've chosen to live a very conscious life of trying to reintegrate better habits, patterns, and experiences. But once you've moved out of observing the body in a concentrated form, then watch yourself in a concentrated form, right? You're not just watching the candle anymore, you're watching yourself watching the candle, which is it's a whole other level. But I'm going to leave you with that thought. I'm going to leave you with that seed, okay? Start with something basic. Start with something tangible. Stare at the candle. Focus on your breath. You know, focus on your body parts. And then if you feel really confident there, right, and you're working into like 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, then I want to encourage you to work into then watching yourself, watching the candle, watching your breath, and watching your body, because this is where the bigger magic happens in your life in general, okay? But baby steps. We all start with baby steps. So I hope that these 3 examples were tangible enough for you to get started on a meditation practice. Again, don't go for the big, you know, like 5K run. Just go for a little jog and see what it feels like. Get started, get comfortable, find a time of day that works for you. Be really practical in how long you want to go. And be gentle and kind to yourself, because meditation is one of the most advanced practices that you can integrate into your daily life, okay? So I hope that that was helpful, and I hope to see you guys next time. Namaste.